Isn't it funny how things work out? Just absolutely hilarious, isn't it? That the way it works out is that today we're going to talk about the Dallas Mavericks just after they win the lottery. It just worked out that way. Obviously, we had our lottery mock draft episode, so had we not done that, would have been the day after we were going to talk about Dallas. So maybe I should have known weeks in advance. Maybe I should have planned my podcast schedule differently so that we weren't going to have this issue. Maybe I have way more control than I even realized. Maybe I'm the one who rigged the lottery. But if I did that, it would have been done differently. Anyways, my line of thinking, I'm going to cut it off and we're just going to keep this rolling because we're going to talk about Dallas, who now is in an excellent position after 2.5 months of not having a generational talent for the first time since the 90s, because you go from Dirk Nowitzki to Luka Doncic, have a year of overlap. Obviously, Dirk was getting up in years right before Luka, so it wasn't like they had a top 5 player in the world the entire time, but a generational talent handing off to a generational talent. 2.5 months with no well, I guess it was like 3.5 months since the trade, 2.5 months of basketball. And that's to say, no generational talent. They only had Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson, Derek Lively, blah, 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 blah. It's still a very stacked team, and now they have one of the best prospects in recent years. So we're going to go ahead and dive into all things Dallas. But before we do that, I wanted to remind you guys that BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season is in full swing. We've got the NHL and NBA playoffs going on. Tonight we have Game 5 of the Celtics-Knicks series, obviously going to look very different with the Knicks up 3-1 playing in Boston, but obviously no Jason Tatum with the torn Achilles. That's going to obviously keep him sidelined for the rest of the playoffs, and I would assume a good bit into next season, if not most of next season. Just a really stinky situation. You feel for Tatum, you feel for Celtics fans. We'll get into the specifics of how that impacts things eventually. So we'll talk about the Celtics eventually. But obviously with this series, kind of stinks. But Boston's still favored by 4.5 for Game 5. The home court advantage helps, obviously. But yeah, gonna be an interesting one. And then after that, we'll have Game 5 of the Warriors Timberwolves series headed back to Minnesota. They are currently favored by 11 points. The Warriors are trying to keep this thing alive to get to Game 6 to have Steph Curry back. We'll see. We'll see if they're able to do it. But if you want to bet on either of those games, BetOnline is a great place to do that. They have the largest selection of odds on everything from the MLB to the NHL and UFC. They remain the number one online source for all your sports wagering info. In between the games, you can head over to the BetOnline casino. And with all the top Vegas style games they have, including poker and a live casino, BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, now we got to do it. Stupid Dallas. And I say that as like an outside fan perspective. Actually, I'm not anti-Dallas. It's just like, come on. To be rewarded for the roster mismanagement. Shout out to Dallas fans. You guys, like, good for you guys. But also just keep in mind that this probably keeps Nico Harrison around a lot longer. So I guess you gotta take the good with the bad, but I think I would take Nico Harrison as my GM if it brought me Cooper Flagg as well. But yeah, they have one pick in the draft this year, and that's going to be the number one overall pick. As far as their future picks, they have their 2026 first, not their 2027. OKC can swap its pick in 2028 if it wants. They had the Lakers first in 2029, and then they're part of a potential pick swap in 2029 and 2030 as well. And then things go back to normal after that. So they still have picks to trade. Like they can, obviously, they're not going to trade Cooper Flagg or the rights to Cooper Flagg, but they have other picks that they can trade. If we're looking at the roster for next season, Kyrie Irving has a player option for this upcoming season, as does Dwight Powell. Don't expect either of them to decline those. Dante Exum and Spencer Dinwiddie are free agents. Could see either way. those guys coming back or leaving. But most of the roster is still here, kind of already intact. Uh, a lot of team friendly deals here. I mean, most of the money is going to be on AD and Kyrie Irving. And then Klay Thompson, PJ Washington, and Daniel Gafford are all between 14 to 17 million per year. And then after that, it's players that are making less than 10 million a year. We have Max Christie on a rookie deal, Derek Lively on a rookie deal, Omax on a rookie deal. He hasn't been able to play much yet. Um, but maybe this is a year that they make other moves and he gets into the rotation. Maybe he's part of a trade package to bring in someone else. Maybe he just doesn't play much again. That's entirely possible. Jaden Hardy is still there on a rookie deal. So this is a very talented roster. It was already going to be a very talented roster before they got the number one pick. But now they're a very talented roster that's also going to have this generational talent, and they're going to get him playoff experience. Fully healthy, this Dallas team is going to be one very difficult to score on. Cooper Flagg is no scrub defensively. He's one of the best defenders in the draft. And I think that's what makes him such a generational prospect, is that he's shown incredible playmaking ability from that spot, from as a 6'10", 6'9" forward. Duke literally didn't have a point guard. They had four players that could play make. They had Zion James, Con Knipple, Tyrese Proctor, and then Cooper Flagg kind of occupying that role in the starting lineup, sharing the responsibilities. But with Kyrie Irving injured to start next season, we're going to see Cooper Flagg get those opportunities early on. And there's probably going to be growing pains. There was growing pains early on during his college career. There's a couple games where I forget exactly who they were playing, but maybe it was Clemson. He had to drive to the basket late in the game, just totally turned the ball over, and it was like, oh, Cooper Flagg, he sucks. Or, obviously, it's just a growth opportunity for an 18-year-old playing against players a few years older than him. And now he's just going to continue to grow. But he's playing on a team that was going to be a tough out in the playoffs. I don't think you would consider Dallas to be a favorite next year without Cooper Flagg, but if they're healthy with AD, Kyrie, and the defense behind them, and Klay Thompson can still get hot. He's nowhere near what he was, but still a very capable shooter. It's a dangerous team. It's a tough team to beat 4 times in a 7-game series if they're healthy. But now they have this really young kid coming in as well. And they're going to go to him early and often, because the main question after Dallas traded Luka Doncic away was, wow, they're placing a lot of responsibility on the shoulders of 2 aging stars who have had a lot of injuries recently, and Kyrie and Anthony Davis. And now Kyrie's obviously going to be out to start next season. Not sure exactly when he'll be back, but I would assume he misses at least a few months. But Cooper Flagg's going to get those opportunities early, and it's going to be really good for his growth. It's a great landing spot for him in a vacuum, and just for his, I guess, future development and his growth, and for the league. I think that's actually kind of an interesting thing, outside of the factor that Nico Harrison trades away Luka Doncic and then kind of gets a get out of jail free card here. Outside of that, you're having Cooper Flagg in the same division, same state as Wemby and the Spurs, and then this young up and coming Rockets team that was the 2 seed in the West this year, led by Amen Thompson and Alperen Sengun. All 3 of those teams have a top 10 pick this year, might I add, with San Antonio picking number 2. That's another factor there. So that's just interesting storylines to follow in Texas, which is pretty cool. Cooper Flagg is going to get a taste of playoff basketball as a rookie. We saw Jason Tatum in a semi-similar situation where he was on a team that made the Eastern Conference Finals during his rookie year and came very close to making the NBA Finals during his rookie year. And that, he's had a lot of success in the playoffs, and he's been on very good teams his entire career, but he's also been able to grow through those experiences. And I saw a tweet, I forgot, maybe it was Andy Bailey, that basically at Jason Tatum's exact age, there hasn't been anybody that had made more conference finals, more scored more playoff points, or whatever it was. Just a bunch of different things that nobody had ever done at what his age is, which is 27 years and like 70 something days or something like that. So I think just having Cooper Flag get that experience early on is going to be excellent for his career. It's going to be a lot of fun. He's going to be a contender for obviously for rookie of the year, probably would have been regardless of where he ended up. And now he's in a situation where he's on a good team. So if we've seen that factor in sometimes where being on a good team helps for a player to be rewarded with rookie of the year. So that could help him there. And then just getting to pick the brains of a few Hall of Famers. Head coach, Hall of Famer, Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson, Hall of Famers. Cooper Flagg's in a really good spot, even though I think the only negative is more of a storyline narrative line of thinking that, wow, I can't believe Dallas is getting rewarded, even though they were a play-in team, which, I mean, Matt and I talked briefly about the lottery yesterday. I think you could dive in a little bit more into why the NBA has it versus other leagues don't, or I guess the NHL has it too. I'm not a huge hockey guy, but I'm pretty sure they do have a lottery as well. But like why the NFL doesn't have a lottery, but the NBA does. I think that there's factors for that. Tanking has been an issue in the NFL the same way it has been in the NBA because one or two games at the end of an NFL season to improve your pick odds. One doesn't always work because they try and bench players and then other players step in fighting for a roster spot and they win games. And it happens. So but you're also not having this issue where the final 3 months of the season teams are not playing their best players. And does the lottery even work? Because now all these fans had to deal with these terrible seasons. And yeah, this season's sucked for Dallas fans too, but not the same way. Because they were still a competitive team, whereas you had other teams intentionally being not competitive, and then other teams that weren't trying to lose, but were just focusing on, such as like Washington, just focusing on development, or Brooklyn. They had every reason to tank, and they tried to win games and only had the 6 best odds and still fell in the lottery. We won't turn this into a full, or I guess I will stop ranting about the lottery, focus back in on Dallas. So we can talk about some of the players, because adding in the top player in the draft obviously changes things for everyone else. So we'll just kind of go down the list here. We'll start with Kyrie Irving. We'll keep things semi-brief for him because he's going to miss a good bit of time before he makes his debut for next season with the knee issue. But he was good this past season. 24.7 points, 4.8 rebounds, 4.6 assists. Basketball Monster has him 13th in per game value. Only played 50 games, which obviously when you miss the final month and a half of the regular season, and then he missed a few games throughout, but was relatively healthy prior to the knee injury. But he's having to play so many minutes after they traded Luka. Just going now, he played 11 games, got hurt in game 11. Played at least 37 minutes in all but one of those games, where he played only 32. In a blowout loss, played over 40 minutes 4 times, played just under 40 minutes twice. Like, it's heavy minutes for a player that is 33 years old. He was 32 at the time. It's a lot on him. So I think because also Anthony Davis missed time because everybody knows he got hurt in his debut for Dallas. And then adding in Cooper Flagg, having AD back, those things will be good for Kyrie. I mean, he's still going to be Kyrie Irving. I'm not expecting a dramatic statistical drop off. I'm expecting him to continue to be a borderline top 10 per game player in 9-cat leagues. We just got to hope for better health. It hasn't been the case for a while now. So I guess setting the realistic expectation that Kyrie Irving probably isn't going to play 70, 75 games next year. That's okay. He's going to be very productive when he's on the floor. He's still got, I would say, a handful of years left, maybe 5 years left, but like probably some sort of decline soon because he is 33 now. So getting up there in NBA age. Obviously, there isn't too many players that are playing till they're 40. Obviously, LeBron and Chris Paul are doing it now, and there's other players that are having a lot of success in their late 30s. And Kyrie Irving could still follow that, but there's got to be some sort of limit here, especially with the amount of injuries that he's had. So we'll see. Hopefully, he doesn't miss too much time to start next year. But I think Dallas being able to now turn to Cooper Flagg and focus on his development with the ball in his hands, that's going to work wonders for his career. And when the playoffs come around, they can still rely on their stars, their current stars in Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis, but Cooper Flagg's going to be way more prepared to contribute than he would have been had Kyrie been around the whole time. I think it's a blessing in disguise for Dallas as a team and for Cooper Flagg's development. So obviously we're not happy or rooting for injuries at any time, but taking advantage of the opportunities when they present themselves. It's going to be good. And then Cooper Flagg just continuing to grow is going to help keep Kyrie healthy. He doesn't need the ball in his hands as much. He can defer to Cooper Flagg. And then there's also this other older guy. Oldish. Not super old. 32. Everybody knows the injury history. He's able to come back and play in the postseason. With how dominant he's been on the floor, it's made up for some of the injury issues because he's continued to be a top 5 fantasy player the last few years. Only played 53 games, 51 during the regular season this past season. So, but the year before that, he played 76, and that was, I want to say, the best of his career, at least the best in a really long time. 80 is the same thing. We know exactly how good he's going to be. We just need him to stay healthy. He was really good when he came back. Just looking at his last handful of games, because he got brought along slowly, limited minutes first couple games. Then he had a 34-15-2-1-5 game. He had a 23-13-10 game with 7 blocks, second to last game of the year. And then he had in the play-in tournament, he didn't shoot well against Sacramento, but they still got the win. 27-9, 113. And then in the loss to Memphis, had 40 points to go with another full stat line. So healthy entering the offseason is good. Hopefully, I mean, I would assume he's healthy to start next season. Hopefully he can keep that going for most of the year. But we just know how good he's going to be, and that's not going to change. And I think what the interesting thing here is for him, and maybe this is honestly just the number one question we need to answer at this point, is what does this starting lineup look like at the beginning of the year? And what does this starting lineup look like when everyone is healthy? And that's going to be a tough question to answer. I don't think Klay Thompson is going to come off the bench. I know Anthony Davis isn't going to come off the bench. But with Kyrie Irving hurt, I don't think that they bring Cooper Flagg off the bench. So that's 3 starters right there. And now we're either starting AD at center with Cooper Flagg at the 4, and then probably some sort of front court with PJ Washington in there as well, and then someone at point guard. We could see, here's an option, Derek Lively at center, AD at power forward, and then PJ Washington, Cooper Flagg, and Klay Thompson in a massive starting lineup with Cooper Flagg as the point guard. I think that's more of a lineup they could run than a realistic starting lineup. But we'll see. Does Dallas try that? I think I would. Let's take this guy we just drafted number 1 overall and see how he does playing point guard in the NBA. Maybe they don't do that from day one, but like you get him reps playing actual point, like just against star point guards in the NBA. See what that does for his development. It's an option. We mentioned Spencer Dinwiddie's a free agent, so they don't really have the next point guard in line, because Dante Exum's also a free agent. So Jaden Hardy, Brandon Williams, those are the other point guard options. So maybe they make a move this summer and bring in a new point guard that we can't really factor in right now that can be a starter until Kyrie is healthy. That's an option. I'm sure that they'll have to explore that, but I'm now kind of set on we need to get Cooper Flagg some point guard reps. But they also have other solid wing players, which we'll get to everyone. Caleb Martin, Najee Marshall, Max Christie, and then we mentioned the centers, Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively. There was a report, forget from who, that Daniel Gafford wants to be a starting center. Probably not going to happen in Dallas, especially now. Could he be traded in a deal that sends back a point guard that can be a starter for now and then a backup when Kyrie is healthy? That's an option. I think that's a smart option. So we'll have to figure out how that looks like. But if they do run a lineup with Cooper Flagg, Anthony Davis, and Derek Lively there, and then they could also run like that as a lineup. Those three, PJ Washington, and then Kyrie Irving when he's healthy. Maybe not as a starting lineup because it just feels like Klay Thompson's going to start. But as a lineup where it's capable offensive players, but Kyrie Irving and four unreal defenders, Dallas is going to have some fun lineups, especially if Cooper Flagg progresses as a playmaker to the point where they feel confident with him being like the playmaker in a lineup. Because you can have lineups with Kyrie and Klay on the bench and everyone's fully healthy and have Cooper Flagg as the primary ball handler, but other forwards that can play with the ball in their hands, such as like a Najee Marshall, maybe Max Christie, guys you aren't going to want to have a ton of on-ball reps like for a long period of time, but guys that can kind of fill that role for a little bit, along with PJ Washington and Anthony Davis, who's also a guy that you can just run the offense through. Dallas is going to have some very fun lineups to utilize this year. Not like nothing's going to change for AD's production. If he's at center, maybe he sees his rebounds go up. If he's at power forward, he's still going to be a really good rebounder. Not too concerned about that. He only played 9 regular season games for Dallas. And then, so the numbers aren't as good as they could be for just his games with them. But they're still really good because he's a fantastic player. All right, who else do we have in Dallas that we can talk about next? I think Derek Lively is probably the guy that we need to talk about next. Let's see, he missed a large chunk of time. I think that was foot injury, if I'm remembering correctly. I'm not gonna verify, but he did miss an extended period of time in the middle of the year, but was able to come back late in the year. I remember there was reports because they were dropping like flies there for a minute. Lively was out before the trade, but Anthony Davis got hurt, and then Daniel Gafford got hurt, Kyrie got hurt. And so then there was the reports that Dallas was going to like start sending them down to the G League. And it was like, yeah, okay, like this is just them pretending to not tank, but like they're actually going to tank. But to their credit, Dallas never tanked. So maybe I feel a little bit better about them getting the top pick because at least it wasn't a team that full on pulled the plug. Like Dallas had every reason to pull the plug on their season, say, let's try and get a couple picks earlier and we'll try and run it back next year and be healthy, but they didn't. So to their credit, they tried to win games, got these guys back in the lineup, won a play-in game, and then we're 1 win away from making the playoffs. And then the result of a coin flip lands them Cooper Flagg. So what are you going to do? That's just the way the NBA works. Lively had a very limited role because he only played 6 games, including the 2 play-in games after returning from a almost 3-month absence. I am a bit not concerned because I think he's still going to be a really good player, but felt like both Lively and Gafford were maximized by having Luka Doncic feeding them lobs. Kyrie's still incredible, but there's only a handful of players that can operate pick and rolls like Luka. So I still think Lively's going to be good, but he doesn't have the same upside in my mind that he had before. Still a good rebounder, a good defender, like a traditional center without a superstar point guard. So still good. And I assume that Lively is going to be the starter. And it may get to, well, I mean, it will get to a point, assuming they keep this together, that Cooper Flagg and Derek Lively are their 4 and 5 at some point. Either one's Anthony Davis' next contract is up, or they trade him some point in the next few years. Obviously, AD isn't going to be a Maverick for the rest of eternity. Could be 2 more years. Could be, let's see how much longer his contract is. So he's got 3 more years left on his contract. Maybe he wants to stay. Maybe he wants to go elsewhere. I don't know. But I still think Lively has upside to be a really strong fantasy player, but he's not, I guess, dynamic enough to me that he's like a guaranteed top 50 or better fantasy player just because he's playing significant minutes. Like if they get rid of Gafford and have Lively play 32 minutes per game, I think that there's a path for that, but I don't think he's dynamic enough. Like he's a good passer for a center, but I'm not sure that he has the dynamic offensive game as a scorer to really warrant being considered like a fantasy superstar, anything like that. But we'll see. Maybe he's able to take a major leap this year, one that I can't really foresee. But I think things change for a center that's relying on lobs when the guy throwing the lobs gets traded. Dallas is an interesting team to even talk about, just looking through the players, because they have strong players, not great for fantasy, but can be great for fantasy in spurts, that aren't super young either. So we're talking about like a PJ Washington, a Klay Thompson, a Najee Marshall, very solid players. Najee Marshall is very versatile. I think he can fill a number of different roles for them. PJ Washington is an excellent defender, and then has offensive spurts, usually a little bit better when he's asked to do more. When he's not playing a high volume role, tends to not work as well. We know what Klay is at this point of his career. A younger upside guy like a Max Christie, who started off his tenure with Dallas really well and then kind of faded off a little bit. Still think he has some upside, is like has a bright future, but maybe more is just a really strong role player. We'll keep an eye on him, see how things go, because he is one of the younger players on this Dallas team that has upside. Can shoot, can defend. Fits Nico Harrison's build. Defense wins championships. So I think that they'll be looking to keep him around, make him part of the future. Jaden Hardy is has a young upside scorer. I think his ceiling is probably like a solid 6th man, like a volume 6th man, which I don't know, maybe that exact model of 6th man is almost going extinct. Trying to think about it, because it feels like every team used to have some one-on-one scorer that could come in, chuck tough shots, hit them, and could like really change a game like in a snap. I don't think it's the same that we see today. We still see some very good players come off the bench that still provide that spark, but they're doing it in different ways. Naz Reid is like a different style of that spark plug. Peyton Pritchard, trying to think who else was a finalist this year. Ty Jerome, like different styles from if we're looking back at like a Jamal Crawford, just different style of play. But I think Jaden Hardy feels more like that old school early 2010s 6th man. That's probably part of the reason he hasn't played a significant role, because the inefficient shot chucker to come off the bench. But what if they get hot and now all of a sudden we have a 10-point lead and all the momentum? that type of player just doesn't have the same, I guess, opportunity in today's NBA. One of the only other young pieces on this team that we haven't talked about, or I guess I briefly mentioned, is Olivier Maxence Prosper. He just hasn't played much yet. Former first round pick, I think if he gets the opportunity, he can do a lot of different things that play well in a category league, but he just hasn't gotten that opportunity yet. Has had some strong G League performances, but it's hard to crack the rotation on a team that is consistently in the playoffs, was in the NBA Finals ahead of last season, not this past season or this current season, depending on how you want to say it. Did play more this year, but still wasn't playing a significant role often, and then had wrist surgery to end his season a bit early. I think that would have been a really good opportunity for him to just kind of continue to play that season out, get more minutes. With Dallas missing a lot of guys, kind of stinks that it happened that way, but it was just another injury for them. They just had so many. So we'll see. I think I mentioned this earlier. Could be a guy that's included as like an upside swing in a trade. That's a possibility. Or just a guy that they just continue to try and develop in the G League, or by giving him little bits of minutes here and there. But I think adding Cooper Flagg into the equation just changes everything. They also have Caleb Martin, if you remember the Quentin Grimes trade, where they traded Quentin Grimes away to get Caleb Martin, I believe also attached a second round pick, because that was my number one question. And then Quentin Grimes did what he did in Philly. Kai Jones had some solid games, but that was when nobody was healthy for Dallas. That's really the extent of the roster. Spencer Dinwiddie. He can play some solid minutes if he signs back and kind of fill that point guard role, get some decent assist numbers. Not a great fantasy player, but can fill the role for a little bit until Kyrie gets healthy. But it's hard to talk about anything with this team without just reverting it back to, but now they have Cooper Flagg. He is now the priority over everyone else on the team. So again, congratulations to Dallas. Sorry if I was very bitter at the beginning, but I think it's just crazy that, to get blessed with that many players. If you've been a fan of Dallas for a little while, to go from Dirk to Luka to Cooper Flagg, it's very cool. I wish that my team had that type of timeline, type of path. Hopefully, Cooper Flagg will be able to bring championships to Dallas. I think it's very cool. But man, what a bright future. I think it's going to be interesting to see where he goes in Dynasty startups this year. I would say pretty easily top 10, maybe even closer to top 5, just because of the upside that he has. But obviously, all eyes will be on him and this team moving forward. There's going to be, feels like the spotlight hasn't come off of Nico Harrison since Luka Doncic was traded. That's a hard place to live in and a hard place to be. So I hope for his, I'm sure the criticism that he received wasn't good for his mental health. So I hope that this helps ease some things, and maybe he can make this work for him from a human level. From a team and sports level, then no, I don't care. But from a human level, I try my best to feel like, okay, maybe this will be a good thing for him. I'm just going to keep rambling, so I'm going to end this here, and we will be back next time to talk about, let's see who we're going to talk about next time. It will be Miami. A lot less to be excited about there, but we will talk about it. If you wish, you can follow me on Twitter at NoUrban22. Like, comment, subscribe on this episode, on previous episodes. If you missed it yesterday, had Matt Lawson on to go through a mock draft for the first 14 picks through the lottery. And we went pretty in depth, over an hour, just talking about 14 picks. So a lot of insight there. Matt is an absolute genius, really knows what he's talking about. So a lot of information there. I feel like I learn every time I have him on a podcast, but we're going to be doing that more frequently, as we talked about, having him on every Tuesday to come bless us with some knowledge. Make sure to check those out and follow him. I'm sure if you're listening to this, and you probably already are, but make sure to give him a follow at NBA Dynasty ADP. That's going to do it for this episode, and I will see you tomorrow.